Hello, and welcome back to The Learning Quest, powered by FocusQuest, your guide to navigating modern education and actually future-proofing your career. I'm your host today, Dr. Ndala Booker, and I am so glad you're with us. So, let me ask you something. When you picture a mentor, what do you see? I'm serious. Close your eyes for just a second and picture it. So, I'm willing to bet most of you pictured someone sitting behind a huge mahogany desk on the 40th floor of some downtown high-rise, wearing a perfectly pressed suit and ready to drop some wisdom on you about climbing the corporate ladder, right? And listen, I get it. That image, it's everywhere. LinkedIn, commencement speeches, every motivational poster that's ever hung in a school hallway. The mentor is always powerful, always polished, and always impossibly far ahead of where you are. But here's what I want to talk to you about today. For a lot of us, for the adult learner who's working a full-time job and going to school at night, for the first generation college student who's never been inside of a university before, or none of their family members have ever been in a university before, for the career pivoter who's been amazing at something for 15 years and is now starting over, that corner office image, it doesn't just feel far away, it feels irrelevant. Because here's the truth. Connection matters more than prestige. The mentor who actually changes your life is not necessarily the one with the biggest title. It's the one who gets where you're coming from. And today, we're going to talk about how to find that person and why it matters more than you might think. Okay, so let's get into it. We've all heard the advice, work hard and you'll succeed, or failure is not an option, or successful people sleep less. I love that one. You know the greatest hits. So here's my problem with all of that advice. It assumes that everyone in the room started at the same place, and that's just not true. So let me paint three quick pictures for you. First, meet our 35-year-old adult learner. She went to college right out of high school, life happened, and now she's back 12 years later with 2 kids and a full-time job and a mortgage. She's not just choosing between sleeping and networking, she's choosing between sleeping and helping with homework. When someone tells her to hustle harder, she doesn't feel inspired. She feels exhausted and a little bit judged. Then there's our first generation student. He's the first person in his entire family to walk into a university. Nobody in his house knows what FAFSA really means, or what a syllabus is supposed to look like, or what happens if you miss an add drop deadline. He's not navigating a system that was built with him in mind. He's doing this essentially alone. And then there's the career pivoter. Maybe she spent 10 years in the military, or maybe he spent 15 years in retail management. They're smart, they're capable, and they've done things that would genuinely impress most people in a boardroom. But they feel like they're starting at zero because nobody's telling them how to translate what they already know. Here's the thing about all three of these people. Generic hustle advice is just not helpful for them. In fact, it's not just unhelpful. It can actually be harmful, because when the advice doesn't fit your life and you still can't make it work, you don't think that advice was bad. You think, I must be the problem. And that is also simply not true. So can I ask you something really quick? How many times have you felt guilty for missing a networking event because you had to pick your kids up from school, or you skipped a study group because you had a night shift? Be honest with yourself. That guilt, it's not a sign that you don't care enough. It's a sign that you're carrying a lot. And sustainable growth means working with your real life, not despite it. All right, let's talk about something that I think about a lot. And it's something that doesn't get nearly enough airtime. It's called the hidden curriculum. Here's what I mean by that. Higher education and the professional world are both full of unwritten rules. Rules that nobody puts on a syllabus. Rules that people who grew up around college or around corporate environments just kind of absorb through the air. But if you didn't grow up with that, nobody tells you. You just feel like you're always slightly behind and you don't even know why. So let me give you a really simple example. Office hours. For a lot of first generation students, those two words, office hours, sound like the professor is in their office, but probably busy. Please don't bother them, right? Nobody told them that office hours literally means, please come and ask me questions. I set this time aside specifically for you. Or how about this one? How about sending an email to a professor? Something that might seem simple to someone who grew up writing formal communication. For a first generation student, that email can feel like diffusing a bomb. Like, what do I say? Do I call them by their first name, their last name, doctor, professor? What if I sound dumb? What if I'm bothering them? And don't even get me started on financial aid language. EFC, COA, SAP, satisfactory academic progress, even when you break it down. These terms are just thrown at students who are already overwhelmed and expected to just know what they mean. This is where a really great mentor makes all the difference. Not because they have all the answers, but because they say the two most important words in higher education. Me too. They say, I didn't know what that meant when I started either, but here's what I figured out. That kind of validation, that permission to not know everything and still belong here, it changes everything. First generation students carry something heavy that a lot of people don't see. They're not just trying to graduate for themselves. They are carrying the hopes of a whole family, sometimes the hopes of a whole community. And that weight makes it really hard to raise your hand and say, I don't understand. Because what if asking the question confirms what you've been afraid of? That maybe you don't belong here after all. But that's what connection-based mentorship does. It says, you belong here. I'm going to help you learn the language. And that is worth more than any corner office. Now, I also want to say something to my adult learners specifically for a minute, because I hear this all the time and I want to address it directly. I'm so far behind. Now, this one is my favorite. Everyone in my class is 10 years younger than me. I don't even know how to use half of these new platforms. I hear you. And I also want to offer you a different way of looking at your situation, because I think you've been counting your experience as a gap when it's actually your greatest competitive advantage. Think about what you've actually done in your years away from school. You've managed conflict in real workplaces with real consequences. You've navigated family emergencies without a support system. You've managed a budget when things were tight. You've shown up consistently for people who were counting on you even when you didn't feel like it. That's not a gap on your resume. That is a masterclass in everything a degree tries to teach you. The right mentor helps you see that. They help you translate, I manage a team of 12 people at a distribution center, into the language that a hiring manager or a professor or a scholarship committee is looking for. So they help you stop apologizing for your path and start presenting it as the strength that it actually is. So if you're sitting there feeling behind, I want you to hear this. Stop viewing your time away from school as something to explain and start viewing it as your competitive advantage, because the wisdom that comes from living a real life, you can't get that in a classroom. And the right mentor is going to help you use it. Okay, last segment. We've talked about why the corner office myth is holding people back, about the hidden curriculum, and about the superpowers that come with lived experience. Now let's talk about what to actually do. But first, I have to acknowledge something that sits right underneath all of this that I forgot to mention, and that is imposter syndrome. That quiet voice that says, you don't really belong here. That sooner or later, someone is going to figure out that you don't know what you're doing. Here's what I've noticed. The mentors who actually help people move through imposter syndrome are not the ones who pretend they never had it. They're the ones who admit it. The vulnerable mentor who says, I was terrified my first semester too, is 1,000 times more powerful than the hero mentor who acts like they've arrived fully formed and fully confident. That's nobody. Because when someone who's made it looks you in the eye and says, I felt exactly what you're feeling, it doesn't diminish them. It gives you permission to keep going. So here are 3 things you can do right now to find your people. Number 1, look 2 or 3 steps ahead and not 20. You don't need a CEO. I mean, if you've got one, that's great. But you need someone who was in your exact situation 2 or 3 years ago and figured it out. Their path is recent enough to actually be useful to you. Number 2, use the networks that are built for you. Alumni networks, professional associations, community organizations, your own program's faculty. Look for people who share your background, your lived experience, your industry focus. The overlap is where real connection happens. Number 3, start small. Please, please, please stop leading with, will you be my mentor? That is a huge ask for a first interaction, and it makes most people freeze. So instead, say this. I'm working on something, and I'd love 15 minutes of your perspective on one specific thing. That is a yesable ask, and most people will say yes. All right, here's what I want you to walk away with today. Finding the right mentor is not about LinkedIn titles or corner offices or mahogany desks. It's about finding someone who listens without judgment, someone who validates your experience and doesn't require you to shrink yourself to fit into their definition of success, someone who walks alongside you and says, I see where you are, I know where you're going, and I believe you can get there. That kind of mentor exists. And now you know how to find them. Thank you so much for spending this time with me on the Learning Quest. If today's episode was useful to you, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Next time, we're going to dig into something that I know so many of you are going to relate to. You've already been working. Now let your education work for you. We're talking about how adult learners can take everything they've already built and make education work with the life they've already got. You don't want to miss that one. Until next time, stay curious, stay organized, and keep up the quest. I'll see you soon.